So I'm assuming that yesterday you guys saw this, David Ornstein confirming that Manchester United have a genuine interest in Geovany Quenda. Now this is a player that you guys have probably heard me mention before, but we've never really spoken about his skill set, so that is what we are going to be doing today. Before we get into it, if you could please subscribe to the channel, that would be amazing, so press subscribe, and then we'll get into the video. So the first thing that we need to address with Quenda is actually his starting position. What position does he play on the football pitch? In the academy, he was very much used as a winger. However, under Ruben Amorim, you know that guy, at Sporting Lisbon, he was turned into much more of a wing-back. And I think, therefore, if he was to sign for Manchester United in the summer, that is the position that he would play. Now, what's interesting here is that Quenda is the perfect example of the weak-footed wing-back. What does that actually mean? Well, it means you are essentially the wrong foot. Normally, when you play on the right-hand side as a wing-back, you are right-footed. Therefore, to be a weak-footed wing-back, you must therefore be left-footed, and Quenda is that, and tactically that makes him a really interesting player, particularly under Ruben Amorim a few months ago. He was used in a really interesting way. His left foot was key to the way that Sporting were playing, and we could therefore see something similar at Manchester United. In particular though, what it offers you is a way to play out in the first phase. Now this isn't something that we normally expect with these nippy, agile, quick winger profiles. It's not something that we associate with these players. But Quenda is actually really good in the first phase, and his left foot is a key tactical weapon, because it allows you to draw pressure onto yourselves, but still play inside the press. We know that a lot of teams these days get stuck out wide. You know, the middle of the pitch is very compact, it's very busy, so you get forced out wide where it can be more difficult to progress the ball. Quenda and his left foot is really useful at getting the team back inside the pitch, and this is something that we saw sort of in that famous game between Sporting and Manchester City the other month in the Champions League. Quenda playing on the right hand side. His left foot was a genuine weapon against the Manchester City high press. You can see here, City are trying to get all their players over to one side of the pitch. Because Quenda is left-footed on the right-hand side, his first touch goes back towards his own goal, which gives him, you know, this little bit of space here. He's happy to move away from the opposition, and then the left foot gives him that ability to play the switch. This is something that is really valuable with the weak-footed wing-back. There are also, though, other ways this can work as well. Again, sometimes it will allow you to come inside the pitch, and then really play inside the pitch. You can see again several Manchester City players around him. Being left-footed, he is able to play this pass here, going inside the pitch. The left foot on the right-hand side gives you access back inside the pitch. It's also, though, really useful when Quenda is on the far side of play. So let's say the team is building possession on the left-hand side, like we can see here. Manchester City get a lot of players over towards the ball to try and crowd it out. And this means that as Sporting move the ball across, of course, Manchester City are going to shuffle. They have to move across the pitch as well. But this is when teams are moving across like this, you see errors from players. You see players that just one or two might be a little bit slow. The team isn't normally as cohesive when they're moving across the pitch like this. And this is where, again, Quenda with his left foot, he doesn't need to take a turn because it's already on his strong foot. He has his brilliant ability to play a sort of hooked ball first time round the corner. And actually his long passing numbers and his switching numbers are actually quite impressive. And I do think this is something that, if he signed for Manchester United, would tactically be really interesting for us. Now, what's even more interesting is if we actually take this one step further and think about the psychological effect this has on the opposition. Teams know that Quenda is left-footed, so that when he receives the ball, often he is going to take the first touch inside the pitch. So what we have seen some defenders trying to do to stop him is taking a more narrow approach to the way that they play. So for example, this fullback here, rather than defending on the touchline like you might typically expect, they will take a slightly narrower approach because they know that Quenda wants to come inside, so if they play narrow, he therefore can't go inside. But this is where Quenda's really, really good. I've spoken already about his agility, his ability to quickly change direction at really high speeds and then quickly accelerate. He's really dangerous in his way, and this is where I would describe him as a two-way threat in the middle phase. So yes, perhaps normally he wants to move inside the pitch, but he's also got this brilliant trademark where he will draw the opposition inside and then knock it down the outside, go round them, and then just burst into the space ahead of him. And we've got a lovely example of this here. You can see this is what Quenda wants to do. He wants to spin inside the pitch, and the opposition know this. So the defender here has taken quite a narrow approach. He's in quite a narrow position for a fullback. But Quenda really uses this to his advantage, because what this means is that as the defender comes across, if Quenda is going to go down the line, the defender, because he's got a narrow position, is going to be stretching. He is going to be reaching. You can see it in a moment like this. As Quenda knocks the ball, the defender has to stretch to get there. Because he's given himself this narrow starting position, when the ball goes wider, he's going to have to reach. What happens when you reach? Players, tricky wingers, make you look silly by sticking the ball through your legs, nutmegging you, and coming out the other side with the ball. This is Quenda's trademark kind of move wide on the right-hand side. Because teams know he wants to move inside, it allows him to really manipulate the opposition. Again, in a moment like this, you can see the defender, because he's narrow, he then has to stretch to get out. And a player that is on the stretch is much easier to beat on the dribble. Much easier, particularly for a player like Quenda, who again has that agility, the change of pace. It makes him really, really effective. Again, in a position like this, 2 defenders this time, but still he's got that ability, the burst, the acceleration to go down the outside. And this is why, you know, should he sign for Manchester United in the summer, he's a player which could really aid our ball progression, particularly in the first phase, but also in the second phase as well, particularly in the middle third of the pitch. He would give United a real way to get forward, and I think that's one of the main reasons why Ruben Amorim would be so interested in him. Now, just quickly, before we actually touch on the next part, the other thing I meant to point out, but forgot in that segment, was actually his heat map as well. This also captures the two-way threat. Yes, at a glance, it very much looks like a wide position, but you will also see there are several sort of bumps and lumps in the heat map where he's then moving back inside the pitch with the ball. So that's just something I want to point out, and then we'll get back to the actual video. Now, as we move a little bit higher up the pitch, what we get from Quenda is actually sort of more of the same. He's a very similar player all the way up the pitch. I guess in deeper areas, there is quite a focus on his passing range, his ball protection, his ball retention and things like that. But of course, this is a winger playing wing back, so the main focus is going to be dribbling, because that's what wingers ultimately do. And Quenda is no different. As he moves forward towards the final third, that is still what he wants to do. He can get his head up and pass, and we will look at some examples of that in just a second. But his instinct is to dribble. He's a ball carrier. He's a player that plays with flair, with freedom, with confidence, and he wants to express himself on the ball. Again, the most important thing for me, though, is that as he does move forward, he needs to be a two-way threat. And this is where perhaps in the final third he needs a little more work. In deeper areas, he's great at it because the defenders are aggressive, they're coming towards them, and he uses that to shift the balance and beat a man. When attacks are a bit more settled and the opposition have time to get behind the ball, it's a little bit more difficult because defenders aren't as aggressive, so it's more of a psychological mental game. This is where perhaps Quenda needs a little bit of work. Left-footed, you know, he does want to move inside the pitch where possible. I want to see him trying to commit defenders on the outside more regularly as well. Now, that's not to say he doesn't do it at all. There are certainly moments where he does. I've still managed to block this picture. That's actually quite impressive from myself. Let's quickly move up here. You can see Quenda on the right-hand side picking the ball up. This is what I'm talking about, it being a psychological game. This is a 1-versus-1 situation. This is human versus human. There is a big psychological element here. You are acting on the ball and the defender is reacting. It's about who can get the advantage, who can control the situation. This is where Quenda needs a little bit of work, but there are clear signs there. Of course, again, the acceleration, but also the agility, the ability to stop the ball quickly here, send the defender flying. Look at that guy, he looks a bit stupid now. Quenda's able to cut back inside and then throw another fake in, and that is the same defender once again sitting on the floor. You know, he does have this ability, this change of direction, this nimble footwork. I think the agility is particularly impressive. The way he turns is so quick, it's impossible for defenders to deal with. I want to see him doing this more. Of course, he's a very, very young player. He's not going to be the complete package yet. What I like, though, is that the glimpses are there. There are signs of this. Signs that he can square up a defender. And you can see in this moment here, again, the psychological battle here. The defender knows that Quenda is left-footed, so ideally Quenda wants to move inside the pitch. So that's why this defender has given himself this starting position to force Quenda down the line. What Quenda needs to do is make sure he becomes a player that, when forced down the line, can deliver, like he does here. Here he does it absolutely brilliantly. He gets towards the byline, puts a brilliant cross into the box, and I believe they actually scored from this with the header. So it's an area for Quenda to work on, but he certainly got it. The glimpses are there. There's a lot of potential here. Now, as I sort of alluded to earlier, there is also a lot of potential with Quenda's link-up play, his combination play in the final third. Again, he is left-footed on the right-hand side, which means he wants to drift inside the pitch, which always gives you access back inside the pitch. Manchester United have a lot of right-footed players normally in the team, which means naturally everyone plays sort of in this direction. When you can then get a couple of left-footers in the team that want to come back inside the pitch, it does offer you quite a lot. I think, particularly if we're talking about a dynamic and a potential understanding with Ahmad, this could be terrifying for opposition defenders to try and deal with, because this is two players that can go both ways. Of course, they're both young, still quite raw, they need a lot of work, But this is two players that can go both ways. For the opposition to try and deal with that, it would be an absolute nightmare, because you don't know who's going to pop up where. Yes, Quenda can go down the outside, like we've just looked at, but also he can move inside the pitch as well. And again, it's that left foot which opens up the pass inside to the feet of the striker, or perhaps to your other inside forward, who might then find the overload on the far side. It's that access back inside the pitch, which for me is so important, because I think United have lacked it. And again, I think Ruben Amorim may be looking at players that he's worked with previously, who does it really well, who knows my system, who is able to come back inside the pitch. This young man. See it here, drop of the shoulder, back inside of the pitch, really good decoy run here by the other forward, by the way. He takes a defender with him, and it opens up this space beautifully. A right-footed player just physically couldn't play this pass. So again, this is the benefit of really the profile more than anything. And I actually quite like Quenda's work in these situations. When he does move inside the pitch, I actually think he's a little bit underrated here. I think some of his tight footwork is really impressive. Of course, the weight of pass and decision-making will need work as he gets older, but that will come with experience. There's some really promising signs. Now, again, I guess the perhaps negative is we are talking once again about signing potential, a player who could be very good for Manchester United rather than a player that is already elite, already made. But with the price that's being spoken about, I mean, I would strongly consider this, because it gives us that ability to get an attacker at wing back. And when you do that, you get a player that does this, who gets into the box. Manchester United lack that at times. Numbers in the box. The other night it looked better. We need to see it more regularly. Numbers attacking these positions. When you play a winger at wing back, he wants to get forward. He wants to get into the box, and he's got that awareness in the penalty area, and of course the finishing ability as well. It's probably something he needs to add to his game. This, more goals, cutting inside the pitch, using that left foot. But again, if we're talking about glimpses, potential, can he do it? Will he do it Sunday? I think yes. I think this is a really, really good young player. I think he's not only currently perhaps the best young wing-back in the world, I also think he's potentially one of the best young wingers, which is important to consider as well. Should Manchester United ever move away from the 3-4-3, we need a player that can play a different position. Recently, Quenda has even played on the left wing, so he is versatile. This is a signing to keep an eye on. It won't happen in January, well, January's over now, so it's not happening in January. But I think in the summer, it is something to look at, and I'm going to spend the next 6 months watching him closely, because there's a really good player there, and if United do sign him, I want to know about him. I do recommend, though, that you guys do the same. One, because he's fun to watch, he's entertaining, but two, because I genuinely could see some business being done here in the summer. So it is one to keep an eye on, in my opinion, but it is just that. It is just my opinion. I want to hear yours in the comments down below. What do you make of Quenda? Is he the sort of player that we need or not, because we've already got Ahmad, who has, in moments, a similar profile? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. But apart from that, we are finished for today. So thank you guys for watching. Hope you have enjoyed it. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.